It's 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Welcome to Afronomicslaw Academic Forum's 33rd guest lecture. Thank you for joining us today. This is our first lecture for 2025, and we're very excited to have the esteemed Professor Jarpa Dawuni with us today. Our lecture today is entitled The Making of You, Navigating Various Legal Pathways for Early Career Lawyers. My name is Leezola Zongwe. I am a board member of Afronomicslaw Academic Forum's Southern African chapter, and today I am honored to introduce Dr. Jarpa to you. Professor J. Jarpa Dawuni is an accomplished academic and a legal professional, serving as an associate professor of political science at Howard University in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. She's a qualified barrister-at-law before the Ghana Superior Courts and holds a doctorate in political science from Georgia State University. Her research primarily focuses on judicial politics, gender and the law, international human rights, and women's civil society organizing, with a particular emphasis on the intersectionality of these themes in the African context. Professor Dawuni has authored and edited several significant works, including Intersectionality and Women's Access to Justice in Africa, Gender Judging and the Courts in Africa, Selected Cases, and International Courts and the African Woman Judged, Unveiled Narratives. Her scholarly contributions have been recognized for their depth and relevance, particularly in exploring the roles and challenges faced by women in the legal profession across Africa. I myself has in the past 2 weeks or so that we've been leading up to this, delved into two of her publications, and I invite you to, beyond this, continue looking into Professor Dawuni's work. It is truly a pleasure to read her work. In addition to academic pursuits, Professor Dawuni has been awarded numerous prestigious fellowships, including 2 Fulbright Specialist Scholar positions and the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship. She is also the founding director of the Howard University Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership, established in 2020, which aims to enhance the leadership and participation of women in various sectors. Professor Dawuni's commitment to advancing women's rights and representation in the legal field is further exemplified by her role as the founder and executive director of the Institute for African Women in Law. This non-profit organization focuses on empowering women in legal professions across Africa and the diaspora. Her extensive fieldwork and primary data collection across more than 10 African countries, the United Kingdom and Brazil, have enriched her comparative scholarship. Professor Dawuni's research has been published in various academic journals, and she has presented her findings at numerous international conferences, making her a prominent voice in discussions surrounding gender law and judicial integrity. In recognition of her contribution, Professor Dawuni has received multiple awards, including the Women in Law Academia International Award in 2020 and the President Obama White House Presidential Award for her service on the board of the African Research Academies for Women. Her work continues to inspire young lawyers and advocates for gender equality in the legal profession. Professor Dawuni's impressive background makes her the perfect guest today for our lecture on navigating legal pathways. And therefore, I'll give the floor over to Professor Dawuni so that we can start immediately and then have a short session for questions and answers at the very end, because I know there's many of you that will have questions for Professor Dawuni. So I think we can begin. Professor Dawuni, you have navigated a diverse career path from being a barrister at law in Ghana to an associate professor at Howard University. What key decisions or turning points have significantly shaped your career, and what advice would you give to young lawyers today in making their own career choices?
All right. Thank you, Leezola. Good morning from my side of the world. And it's lovely to be in this room, virtual room with all of you. Let me start first before I come to you to say thank you for that introduction. Whenever I hear introductions about myself, I'm like, is that really me? So just to tell you some of these things that the kind of person I am, I just like to work and I keep going without really thinking about what it means. But thank you, Leezola, for that introduction. And I see that you did a bit more than just my bio, so thank you for that. I also want to thank Afronomicslaw really for having me here. I know you have 1,001 people in the world you could bring, but you brought me. So I'm grateful and I'm excited to be part of it. I really want to thank the organizers, Dr. Ohio, who is here with us, and thank you for chasing up. Dr. Otieno Harrison may also be here at a very busy screen. I can't see everyone. And of course, the indomitable Dr. Professor James Garthi, who is the brainwork, part of the brainwork behind Afronomicslaw, my colleague, my friend, my mentor. And so to all of the board and members of Afronomicslaw, thank you for having me here. And to all of you, wherever you are in the world, for some people it's early, for some people it's late, but you are here to listen. And so what I'm going to try to do is to be as short as possible so we can maximize the time for you to ask questions. I told the organizers I have a hard stop on the top of the hour. I'll see if I can extend a little bit of grace, but I want to make sure that you get the best out of me. So with that introduction and thanks, Leezola, how did I get here, or what are the key turning points? Whew. So I will say that I have lived on earth by God's grace over 5 decades, or close to 5 decades. So I have a lot of experience. So whenever I'm asked this question, I'm like, where do I start from? I'll start from the family, which is the important thing. We all have different family settings. Mine was one where I could flourish as a child. I had both of my parents in the home, and I had the matriarch, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who really played a very important role in bringing us up, or helping my mother to bring us up, 5 of us. And she was someone who, even though she was not formally educated, taught me the values of being who I am today, being strong, being committed, doing what you do and doing it very well. So that's the family part. And of course, my mom was also a very powerful woman who played a lot of roles in business, in politics, and in women's rights. My father was a military colonel, and so I will say that he was very soft at home, especially to the girls, but he was still hard. So in a lot of the way I work, I also think like a military person sometimes. So I pretend I'm in the military, even though I could never go to the military. So this background, of course, helped mold me, my siblings, my aunts, my uncles. But going on to education, I had different professors, different teachers from primary school, different professors in the university who impacted me in different ways. And then maybe I'll talk a bit about that as we move along. But in all of this, I think one thing that made me kind of focus on what I wanted to do was to decide very early what I want to do. So I think almost all of you here are law students. So you do know what you want to do. You set on the path to do what you think you want to do. But it's one thing to decide what you want to do, and it's another thing to work towards it. So once again, you're in law school, that means you're working towards it, but there's a lot more that comes to working towards what you want to be. So knowing who I was in terms of my family background, deciding what I wanted to do for the future, and then working along the way intentionally, very focused, I think are some of the key parts that shaped me. And the last thing is having a network of people who you can fall on, peer mentors, and advanced mentors. And I'll come back to that in a bit. So I think I'll stop here, and hopefully that captured the question you asked.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that was a very broad answer. And I think as we go through our discussion today, we're going to be able to drill down on some of those aspects a bit more because I have follow-up questions. Yes, so your research highlights the challenges of women, the challenges that women face in the legal profession. In your view, what are the most pressing barriers that young female lawyers encounter today, especially African young female lawyers, and how can they effectively navigate these challenges to achieve success in their careers?
Mm. So yeah, as you said, most of my work has been on people in the profession, so judges, academics, lawyers, and I'm finishing up a book now, which is taking me 9 years to work on, which is good because the thing is that between the 9 years, I've done 1,001 other things. So this book is like, okay, I need to really finish it. But throughout that, because of the constituents I deal with, lawyers, judges, academics, and of course, academics, I talk to them. So I understand some of the issues that students also go through. And the good thing is that I was once a student and I am still a student. I learn from Professor Gatti all the time. We should be lifelong learners. So what are some of the challenges I have seen or heard or experienced with law students, female law students? And I also want to, maybe before I do that, respect the fact that there are male students in this room and other identities, and we can talk about that. You also have your challenges. But let me speak on my positionality as a woman and therefore being able to kind of relate and understand what students are facing now, some of which I faced, some of which I didn't. Based on the research I have seen, based on talking to people, one of the biggest challenges female students face now in law schools, it's sexual harassment. There's a lot of sexual harassment going on, and it's all linked to power. Power determines a lot of things. Power is what constructs gender. Power is what determines who should be here and who should get this position. And so even at the law school, unfortunately, it happens. There are a lot of students who are facing different forms of sexual harassment or unwanted sexual advances by professors, unfortunately, and sometimes by their fellow students. So that's one of them. The other thing I think, which I have heard and seen, is to some extent, the lack of formalized mentorship. And I say formalized because I never really had a mentor. And so I write a lot of that in my work. And that's part of the reason why I'm intentional about mentoring. But I'll come to the other part. If you want to be, I've seen and heard so many people who want a mentor. But the question is, do you know what a mentoring relationship is? It's a give and a take. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. So the other thing is a lack of formalized mentoring. Most people say, I want a mentor, I need a mentor, but they don't really understand that the relationship, it's a two-way thing and you have your part to play. So that formal mentoring, and I'll talk about the ways in which you can get mentorship without really knowing someone or a person. So the sexual harassment issue, the lack of formalized mentoring, and I think a third one, which may cut across not just for young women and also young men, is that there's a lot of distraction in this generation, and it's only going to get worse. So there are many distractions out there that also affect the extent to which people can really focus. Attention spans are becoming shorter, and we have to be careful what we spend our time and energy on our cell phones and what we are ingesting, because that would affect how we think and where we want to go. So I'll stop on those three things: sexual harassment or unwanted advances, the lack of formalized mentoring opportunities, and then the third one is the noise and distraction. And we can add more on that as we move on, and I'll be happy to hear from students what are the experiences they are facing.
Yeah, definitely. I think I am particularly interested in navigating or discussing how we can navigate those power dynamics. I have experience with that. And also just, I mean, how do we even begin to minimize distractions when this world is built on a smartphone? As the founding director of the Howard University Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership, Professor Dawuni, you emphasize the importance of mentorship, and you've mentioned it throughout our discussion today. Can you share your thoughts on how mentorship can influence the career trajectories of early career lawyers across the board, but particularly also for women in Africa?
So mentorship, I think about what do we mean by mentorship? Mentorship happens from home. And I have two daughters and I call them roommates. And you know why I call them roommates? Because I tell them that I was the first roommate they had when I was carrying them for 9 months. So we were roommates for 9 months. They were in my body. And so I use that as a form of endearment. So think about it, that we are all roommates somehow, biologically to our mothers. Now let the men argue whether they also feature in that. But once we get out into the world, there are many people that we find ourselves in contact with. So when we're thinking about mentorship, it starts from home, the guidance that you receive from your parents. It's mentorship. Yeah, maybe we call it parenting, but it's mentorship. So it's what I want to say is mentorship is a kind of relationship where you learn, but the learning requires you to be willing to listen, to be willing to learn, and to be willing to act on it. These three things are also connected to a fourth one, which is you being intentional about making sure you also decide what exactly you want to do. Now, why is mentorship important? It's helpful. It helps you to grow. It helps you to mature, and it gives you guidance. We can have different levels of mentorship. Some of them are peer mentors. Your classmates are mentors. You can learn from each other. Then you can have people who are above you in terms of career or age that you can learn from their experiences. And you can also have someone who is quote unquote below you, whether in age or professional wise, that you can learn from. So I always make it very clear when I hear something or learn something from a student or somebody else who is not probably in the same category professionally as I am, I'm very conscious to tell them, that was great. I just learned something new. So what do we do with mentorship? Yes, you can find a mentor, but it also requires you, one, to make sure you find the right person. And this comes back to what we're talking about with women. There are great men out there who are mentors. And actually, I had a book this morning. I put in my bag because I want to read it on the plane. And it was written by the Harvard Business Press in 2015, and it says how and why men should mentor women. So I'm really looking forward to reading that book. So the point is, men can be mentors to women and girls, but with that, you always also have to be careful, which brings us to the issue of sexual harassment we talked about, because it's a very thin line that can put you in a power dynamic where you are facing a problem. Having said that, some of my biggest mentors have been men, and it's been a great mentoring relationship, and it goes on, just conversations, and you get knowledge out of that. So know who you want to choose as your mentor, and be a good mentee, because by the time you choose someone as a mentor, they are probably in a professional setting or stage in their life that they are very limited on time and energy. So when they meet you to talk one-on-one or to reply to an email, take it very seriously, because they don't have time. They are making the time for you, and it's good for you to appreciate that. I have been in positions where I was in a mentoring cohort. They put together a mentoring program, and I had to chase my mentee. I had to be like, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? Shall we talk? And it's like, no. There's 1,001 things I have to do. I would love to mentor you, but you will have to do your part. So be intentional about reaching out. And don't reach out only when you need something. It's okay to reach out once in a while to say, hello, Professor this or Dr. that or Miss this. I'm checking in on you to see how you're doing. It's good because we are human. We also need to hear that. But fourthly, when you reach out to your mentor, also have something specific you want to talk about. So have an agenda item, have a question, or have something you need clarification on. So your time is focused and you get the best out of that moment. And then lastly, I think I would emphasize that as a mentee, remember you can also give. Yeah, so once again, I've done a lot of mentoring, whether students in my classes or people I've met outside. I'm a researcher. I write a lot. Like many other professors will tell you on this call, if you meet a lawyer, they are busy, they have cases, they are dealing with a lot. What can you add? What value can you add to their lives? What can you add to their life? Once in a while, reach out to your mentor and say, is there anything you are working on that I can help you with? Is there anything you're doing that you need somebody to help you administratively? I'm available. Let me know if I can help you do that. That tells that person that you're also interested in their lives and their advancement. Because remember, when your mentor goes up, they carry you up. Yeah. So think about how you, as a mentee, can also help push your mentor up. I mean, it's not going to be the most toughest push, but a little push you can give makes them realize that this is somebody who is also interested in me. This is somebody who is willing to work, who is willing to give of themselves. So when I have an opportunity knocking on this door and I'm thinking, who can I pass this on to? Yep, it's Irene, because among all the people, she's the one who is on point. She reaches out to check on me. She reaches out with specific questions. She reaches out to offer support. And based on what I have seen her do for me, I think I can trust her to do this thing and not disgrace me. So those are the ways in which I think as a mentor, and I'm sure others think as well. Let me end on this note. I know it's been long. I hope you're taking notes. I may be rushing through because I have an appointment to go to, but I'll try to slow down. The last thing is, don't also hold on to a mentoring relationship at all costs. Some mentoring relationships don't work, just like any other relationship. Even parents, some parents don't get along with their children. They go their separate ways. Hopefully that's not your case, but imagine if parents and children can have that. Don't hold on to a mentoring relationship forever if it's killing you. And I've had that experience. A senior person who was supposed to be mentoring me in a program I was working on nearly sophisticated me. And I thought I had to do it because I need to succeed. And finally, when I let go of this person, oh, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Don't think that one person is going to change your life. If it's not working, pack your bags and go. There are many other people out there who can be good for you. So don't get killed in a mentoring relationship. Walk when you have to walk. I'll stop.
Thank you for that. I think the last part of what you just said is probably something that a lot of us needed to hear today. Professor Dawuni, you are currently leading a National Science Foundation grant project, which explores the representation of Black and Afro-descendant women judges. Are there findings that have emerged from this research that you can share with us today that could inspire young lawyers to advocate for greater diversity and inclusion? I want to say within the legal profession in generally, but also within the judiciary.
Yeah, so I will say that unfortunately that research is still quite in the early stages, so we don't have any findings as such. So for the context of those who don't know, it's a research, a comparative study of women in 8 countries. Yeah, so South Africa is one, and Ivory Coast, so those two from the continent. And then we have the United Kingdom, the United States, Brazil, Costa Rica, Trinidad, and Colombia. Yeah, so we've gone around the world as much as we can because it's based also on a selection method of where do we find Black women judges. So it's representative of the world as much as it can. So it's still very early. We don't have findings from that yet. I'm hoping that next time I come to this forum, I'll have some findings to share and we can discuss from there.
Well, we certainly look forward to seeing that work develop and to reading your findings because it's definitely something that's very pertinent and very interesting. So having conducted fieldwork in over 10 African countries and in other regions of the world, how has your international experience informed your understanding of legal practices and career opportunities for African lawyers? What lessons can young lawyers draw from your experiences abroad?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of work, and that's a whole other discussion. I can tell you so many stories on that. So the book I mentioned in the beginning, I've been working on for the past 9 years. And that is part of the reason. If you have to travel across Africa to collect data, you need a lot of time, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of patience. All of those three I don't have. So it's taking me a long time. But in between, I've been doing many other things. So there's a lot that's coming out in that book. But what I've been doing is to also document my process through the 9 years. So I'm kind of writing two books concurrently, of course, in many other things I'm working on. But this book, I'm writing a book that talks about the experiences in every country. So people can read. So when I'm asked questions like, oh, so how was it in Gambia? I'm like, go read this other book. I wrote it in there, leave me alone. And there are photos so you can see. So that's the plan. But what have been some of the experiences? I think those experiences also informed me in creating the nonprofit, the Institute for African Women in Law, because I realized that in many, if not all the countries I talk to people, most of them, women are always in this caregiving work. We start off as girls who are supposed to be working and serving at home. We go throughout life, and the girls are always in that caregiving role. We become mothers and we are caregiving, we become grandmothers and we are caregiving, and we caregive until the grave. So women have this caregiving mindset, which is great. We hold communities together. If only communities will recognize that and respect that completely, we'll have no problem. But where the respect is taken, that's where there's a pushback, and we can talk about that later. A lot of the women, when I interviewed them, I realized how they were excited to talk about the work they do, irrespective of whether it was corporate law, human rights related, judgeship, judicial officers. And I always ended up with, what do you do for yourself? In this country, in Ivory Coast, do you have a women's group? Oh yeah, we do. It's very powerful. We provide legal aid to women and girls. So once again, what are they doing? Outward. They are providing services to other people, which is great. I said, what do you do for yourselves? Do you have trainings? Do you get together to talk about how you can support each other? I can tell you without a doubt, there were very few, if any, in these countries who told me that, oh yeah, we do this and we do that. So that's how I created a nonprofit, part of the reason why. So the point is, there's a lot out there, but one of the other things I heard from a lot of people, and I see in my work with the Institute and also as a professor, is there's also this generational gap where the older generation will tell you, oh, these young ones, they don't know what we went through to get to where we are. They don't take it seriously. They don't reach out to us for help. So one thing I'll say to everyone on this call, male or female, remember that generations change, perspectives change. If you draw closer to that older generation, you will learn a lot. And let me give you a Yoruba proverb I heard. I think it's Yoruba or Igbo. It's Nigerian. I don't like saying African proverbs because Africa is 54 nation states, but this one is from Nigeria. And it says that a child cannot see from the top of a tree what an elder can see from the ground. Yeah, what does that mean? A child will climb a tree, the top of the tree, and think, I can see everything, I'm smart. The elder is standing on the ground and they see everything you think you see up there. What does that mean? They've had experiences that you have not had. So they don't have to go up there to see. You are now seeing it, you are now discovering it. So learn from the elders, whatever the elder category is for you. Listen attentively. and you will learn a lot that can help inform who you are. Choose what is good, of course. Choose as much of it as possible so that you can build your career. They can give you guidance. The challenges they went through may not be the challenges you're going through, but it can inform some of the areas you're going through. And one of that, to kind of focus in really on the question Leezola asks is, these elders are the ones who also see the horizon. They know the professional trajectories or professional opportunities they saw, and they have been able to see the changing opportunities over time. You are now coming in, you might think, oh, AI, technology, it is the thing. Yes, it is. But they can tell you that international transactional law is still very important. They can tell you that no matter what the law does, irrespective of which tradition, common law or civil law, they can probably tell you that yes, international investment law is very important. International human rights law is very important. Think about it. And then that is where you can have a broader perspective to begin to think through, okay, how can I merge these different areas I've heard about? And so I'll end up on this note saying that as you think about your career, think about how you can use the different opportunities to create something unique. We are in a very competitive world. We've always been. It's getting more competitive. Very soon, all of us will be out of jobs because AI will be doing everything. I don't know where we will be, but hopefully we'll still be on this planet. AI is already doing a lot, but you can see it now. I am beginning to see. So how can you place yourself to be unique? And that is where mentorship is important. That is where belonging to a forum like this is important, where you get to listen to different people, connect to different people who come to talk to you. But most importantly, remember, you have so many opportunities that people before you, before me, didn't have. You can literally ask Siri, what is this and that? Now my Siri picked up. So you see there, right there, they are listening in. Let me turn the phone upside down. You can simply ask Google this, and they can tell you. Of course, be mindful what you get out there. So you have many opportunities. And this is what I was talking about, the noise. Yeah, this is part of the noise. We have good noise and bad noise. Good noise is where you can use technology to do research on certain topical issues, research on how can I do this and that. Bad noise is where it's TikTok and Instagram and WhatsApp videos forwarding. And I don't know what else technology we have out there. So distinguish between good noise and bad noise. Let me end up on this note. I published my first book in 2016, my first co-edited book on women judges in Africa. And I came up with the idea, and I was like, there must be something written about this topic. I mean, it just can't be me coming now out of. So I Googled and I couldn't find anything. I was like, no, it's not possible. Somebody must have written something. Long story short, I met with a senior colleague and I said, do you want to co-edit this book? She's like, sure. And she said, send a proposal. I was like, huh? Proposal? What's that? And this was me still very early in my professional career. I didn't know how all this is done. I had written a dissertation, but that was a dissertation. You know what I did even then? 2015. I Googled how to write a book proposal. And I got ideas on, this is how it should look like, the layout, and I followed that prompt and I wrote that proposal and I sent it to her. She was like, oh, this is beautiful. And I mean, I really wrote it from my head, right? Not nowadays with ChatGPT. No, I didn't use Gemini and all those things. I literally wrote it knowing what I know. Okay, the prompt said have an introduction, have a description of the book, have the competitive books. I just followed the format and wrote from my head. And long story short, we published this book, which is the first ever book to be published, a collected book on women judges in Africa. Google taught me how to write a proposal. And of course, my mentor came in. And maybe if we have time, I'll talk about this mentoring relationship, giving you this example I just mentioned, this person and others. So I'll end here. Leezola, I hope people have gotten the different parts of it. Yeah, reach out, know your elders, listen to them, combine it with your generational knowledge, and seek information distinguish between good noise and bad noise, and let technology guide you in the right way.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you you hit the nail on the head, I think, for me at least. But I'm sure for everybody else. And I am mindful of the time, and I'm also mindful of the fact that we want to give the group a chance to ask questions. So I am going to speak to you quickly just about just listing, and then I'll go deeper into it. But I'm just going to speak to you quickly about the role of social media and basically leveraging it. And then about the legal education today. And finally, just your thoughts. So I'll just have those three, and then once we're done, we can hand it over to the group. Okay, so Professor Dawuni, in the current digital age, which we just touched on, social media, of course, plays a significant role as both a distraction, but also as something that can be used for marketing and for propelling ourselves into rooms where we would never be physically. So how do you think young lawyers can leverage social media to build their professional networks and enhance their visibility in the legal field?
Good one. So, how can you leverage technology? I think we've talked about it. One, you can use it for your research. As lawyers, you do legal research as well. And as you can say, as lawyers, yeah, some of you, I think maybe, but you're all getting to become, you're going towards that path. I often say that I used to be a lawyer in my previous life. So when I talk sometimes, I am an insider and an outsider. I have that joy of being able to step in to speak the legalese, the little I remember from law school, and then to step out and to speak as an academic. So I'll speak as both and switch between those two. As somebody who studies lawyers, and I wouldn't say that I studied the whole profession across all 54 nation states and across the different regions. And Nigeria alone, I have to deal with 36 federal states. So definitely there's always a lot that will be left out. But what I see, like I said, it's a competitive world, getting very competitive by the day on the continent alone. If you follow the legal practices that the trends in legal practice across the continent. And I know that as law students, you are very focused now on the books, so you don't kind of look out. But if you follow the trend, there's a lot going on with globalization, competition among law firms. If you listen to the elders and if you've been observing, you realize that law firms in most African countries have gone from what we used to call law chambers, and now they're calling themselves law firms. So some of them are merging so that they can have a bigger group of people, so that they can have different sectors, teams focusing on litigation, some focusing on commercial, some focusing on technology. They have the different teams. And, at the Institute, we do something we call the gender scorecard. For the past 3 years, we've been collecting data on representation in law firms. So managing partners, associates, senior associates, and we disaggregated by gender. So if you are ever interested in volunteering with the Institute, there's always the opportunity to volunteer as a fellow, help us with data collection. It's one of the ways in which you can also learn, yeah. So what you find is that law firms are changing, and therefore you have to be competitive because there's a lot more out there, and there are more law students being called to the bar. Yeah, so apart from the legal profession changing, maybe let me talk about legal education. Leezola, you talked about that. In your countries, and looking at the names, I can see, have an idea where people may be placed. Legal education is changing and has been changing quite fast. Law schools there are more law schools opening up now, which is a good thing, but could also be a bad thing. That means that there's an influx of more people into the profession. The legal profession has always been very much a strong gatekeeper. Yeah. And so there are mechanisms put in place to gatekeep. But there are also ways in which some people, at least in Ghana, there was a case that went to the courts about regulating law school entry. So the point is the market may be getting saturated, but the good news of what I'm seeing, back to the first question, is that young women are doing very well in their law school classes. Some of the top law graduation students have been female. So that is great. So ladies, there's no reason for you not to be the best. And of course, we will continue to do that in a healthy, competitive way with the men. So legal education is changing. So that means that it's, when I hear of what's going on in Ghana, the different models they have brought in, the time students have to spend in class, it's really very tough. By the time you finish law school, how much you know. So a lot of the learning will always definitely come from when you are in practice. And that is why you have to make sure you have the right mentors to guide you. You have to make sure that whilst you're in law school, you have your focus, and then you also have to make sure that you cut down on unnecessary noise. So with all of that, having a good mentor or group of mentors, having the focus on studying and cutting out noise, then it becomes a question you ask. Social media. It's a beautiful place to be. But thankfully, I'm not there, so I don't know. I don't have a passport on Facebook land. I don't have a passport to TikTok land. I am very happy because the few times I have leaned over to watch my daughters flipping through Instagram, and I realized 10 minutes later, I'm still leaning over. I'm like, wow, this thing is bad. It's addictive. So I'm looking at the videos, I'm laughing, and they're like, oh, mommy, you're getting excited. I'm like, yeah, show me that one. And I was like, oh, okay, let me retract. But social media can be good, right? If you use it the right way. Now, the only social media, and I don't know if it's even social media, you'll find me on is LinkedIn, because it's a professional platform. And I go there, really, a lot of the stuff I do is to just kind of repost and comment on the work the Institute is doing. But it's a very good place for you to be. But remember, how you present yourself on LinkedIn will also determine whether a person will click to accept your invitation or not. So there are guidelines, and I think that this requires a whole other session. Maybe Afronomicslaw will bring in, if you guys haven't done that already, somebody who can really talk about communication and presentation. But let me tell you what I see. I look at somebody's picture. It tells me a lot, right? Not the pictures in how the person looks, but if you're taking a LinkedIn picture like this, or at a very terrible angle, or all that, it tells me something. This person doesn't know the platform they are on. So your profile has to be a professional profile. And it doesn't have to be in a studio. You can take it with your phone. Let it be professional. And what you write should also be professional. Keep it short and sweet. If you don't have a lot of stuff to put on there, don't put on there. Keep it short and sweet. Follow the right people and the right groups, because that is how you also learn from what is going on. And then it's a good place for you to reach out to people. But be very careful who you reach out to. And two, be very careful, even more careful, how you reach out to them. So if you just reach out and write something flimsy, you won't get a response. Yeah. So social media can be good. That is where you can also use it to post some of the things that you are doing, the opportunities that you are seeking, and you show your volunteer availability to volunteer, all the stuff we talked about. And post stuff that shows a person, when they look at it, that you're serious, you're minded, you know what's going on in the field, you're a serious law student, somebody who is going to be a serious lawyer if given the chance to work with them. Now that's LinkedIn. Remember that the other social media platforms you are on are a digital footprint that sometimes will never go away. You've heard this before. So the comments you make and who you like and reply to, and most importantly, what you post about yourself. Yeah, when you're having fun and filming each other and all that stuff, and you post and it's gone. You may delete it, but there's a footprint. Some employers now look at people's social media accounts before they call you for an interview. You should know that. So when they see something, they might think, is there somebody you want to be associated with? So be careful also on what you post on other platforms. Let me end on this note with social media. like I said, LinkedIn is the only place I am on. I was supposed to put something yesterday. I didn't get around to it. And it comes back to the question of what we're talking about, mentorship. I have written, and it's based on experience. So if you do follow me on social media, you see it. I have written about 8 posts that I'm going to put on social media. And it's so relevant for this discussion because I've called it a series, Mentors, Moments, and Memories. Yeah. And I've picked 8 of my mentors, and I'm talking about how I met them, what the mentoring relationship was, the memories we created, and what I learned from them. So you see, and I wrote this on a plane. I was traveling across the Atlantic, a 4-hour flight, very, very quick. And I do a lot of writing up in the air. And I decided, let me write it because it's been something for me I've been thinking about for a long time. And so I wrote this. I'm going to be posting them every week. Once again, I think connecting to the discussion today, it tells you that these people have sown so much in my life in different ways. And I want to publicly recognize what they've done. And in the process of doing that, hopefully others too will learn about how you can meet people and how you can build those mentoring relationships and how they can be helpful to you. So those are some of the things. So social media can be good. Use it to recognize your professors. Use it to recognize people in your life. Use it to tell your story, the good stories that we all have. And use it to position yourself competitively as somebody that somebody would want to look at and say, okay, maybe this person is worth giving a try. Yeah. So I think I'll end here and then open up back to you, Leezola.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think you have touched basically on everything that I I was planning on still discussing. So I think we can open the floor up to the members, and I know that there is quite a bed of questions that people have already posted. So I'll first just see if anybody wants to speak before I read any of the questions that have been posted. Is there anybody that wants to ask their questions, quote unquote, in person?
So Leezola, I'm coming. Let me say this once again. Remember, I am here for you. You have no idea how much Afronomicslaw chased me around to pin me down. You really have to thank them. And I'm not saying this as in, I am all that. I am, but I am not. But so please use me. Don't be shy. If you want to send a direct message, you can also do that. If something you're writing is too personal, you can also start off by changing your name. Just write Agent 001 or something like that. So when you type, nobody know who it is coming from. Yeah. So those are just tricks. But we have a little time. So I was going to start off looking at the questions in the chat box since people were quiet. And I think in Kiko has a hand up. So in Kiko, I'll let you ask the question and I'll start taking the questions in the chat box. In Kiko, did I say it right? Tell me how to say that name properly.
Yeah, I can take that. It is Nchiko.
Kiko, okay.
Nchiko or Nchiko, as there are many Nchikos, I guess, by now. Yeah, thank you very much for your insight. And really, really grateful because like career talks, we don't get to hear this every day. Yeah, so I have like a question, not to really suggest anything about settling down, but how do you strike like a balance between a family life and career growth, but really, really particularly scholarly growth? Because they're like, it's really like no shortcut or anything. So I don't know, like any tricks. And really, again, as a woman, given the prevailing approach towards the caregiving roles of women. So now in your experience traveling around the world, around the continent, are you seeing institutions adopting this need to accommodate really like the need of striking that balance? Or are we just going into it like robotically somehow? Yeah, thank you. And really thank you very much for your time and insight.
Thank you, Nchiko. Thank you. I'm so impressed by your question. The fact that one, you asked the first question verbally, and also that it leans more towards what people would call the kind of question that all our gendered minds will think, oh, a lady should be asking that. So I'm really impressed, because one thing I do all the time is we want men to be fighters for gender equality. We want men to be feminists, and men can be feminists. Feminism simply means equality for women and men. And so you can be a man and be a feminist, proudly so. So in Chico, that's a good one. So to answer that question very quickly, look, I'll tell you all, it's not easy. It's not easy. Now you can probably see, I have this thing on my hand because I get what they call carpal tunnel. It's very painful, and it's partly from typing too much. So the last couple of days, I've not been able to type effectively. Actually, stop. I just do what I need to do with the very basics. So that's just one example of what I go through, and many others go through. It's a lot of sleeplessness because you have deadlines to meet, you have to write, you have to meet. And if you want to do it and do it well, so that people know that they can rely on you, when you commit, you have to deliver. So it's a lot. The other part you mentioned, because of the work I do, and I never knew that as an academic, I travel so much. I travel a lot. So I literally have 3 different suitcases, half packed, different sizes. So when I have to do a quick one, I need a small one. I throw stuff in mid-size and large size. So the traveling is also a lot, because it's people look at you and say, oh, you're traveling, that's so good, you're enjoying. Yeah, initially I thought it was, but now no, because before I travel, now my kids are grown, they can take care of themselves somehow. But I have to cook and if I'm going for long periods, you should see. So that book I said I'm writing, Leezola, in addition to this, you'll see it. I've been taking pictures, documenting. I cook like a feast, and I freeze it and I label it. So when I'm gone, they have food. I have 2 daughters. I have to do their hair. I like to do their hair myself. So I braid their hair before I go. And I have all these. So when I'm teaching, I have to take care of my students. So that is all the stuff. Now, my husband is very helpful, so that's a good thing. A good partner is very essential to our success. So he handles the home very well, and I don't have to worry when I'm gone. But I miss the children, and they miss me. I wrote something a couple of years ago called Why I Write. And I think it's on my LinkedIn profile. Talking about LinkedIn, I have to go there and clean up. I just have a lot that I have to put on there. I don't have the time. And I'm looking for a very good student or volunteer who I can trust to give my password and say, clean it up, do it this way, right? So once again, these are some of the things I was talking about. Be available, be helpful. So I wrote that thing out of the moment where I was traveling one morning, very early morning, and I went to hug my kids, and they were like, oh, don't want to go. And God, I started crying in the car. It breaks my heart. So it's not easy in Chico, but you have to keep forcing, you have to keep trying. There are many times when I feel like giving up, and one of them was last weekend. I felt like giving up. I called my board member and I was like, do I really have to do what I do? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I literally started crying. And she's like, okay, get up. Where are you? And I said, I'm sitting here on my computer. She said, it's a Sunday. No, shut the computer down, get up, go for a ride. It's cold. So I went for a ride. But it's not easy. The point I'm making is there are moments where you feel like stopping. There are moments where you feel like giving up. And this is where mentor comes in. I called one of my mentors. She gave me advice. It helped, and I got up. And before that breakdown, last week Friday, I called Professor Gatti because we do our usual catch-ups, and I got him on a good day because we spoke for, believe it or not, I checked my phone, we spoke for about 15 minutes. So I got him on a good day, and we talked that we caught up on so many things, and that was relieving, right? I was in a crisis mode then, but it was helpful. And then, of course, by Sunday, it just broke. So in Chico, it's not easy. But we have to do what we need to do in order to succeed. We have to get a support system that we can rely on. And sometimes we have to make the hard decisions just to say, I can't do this. I'm not going to kill myself, and I have to choose. So those are some of the challenges. And in terms of our institutions doing anything, I'll tell you one thing that impressed me in Nigeria and Ghana that I saw, and I don't know if this happens in Kenya. I'll be in Kenya hopefully in August. A couple of the top law firms had what they call the creche in the law firm for women who had children. And some even had a gym. And I thought that was good. I write this in my book that I'm working on, the 9-year-old book, that it's a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing. Yeah. It's a good thing because then the woman can have health, the child is there, but it could also be a bad thing because then the woman must be thinking, if they have this for me, that means I need to work longer. But the care work doesn't end only in the office, it continues at home. So a few institutions like that have done a few things, and I'm sure there are many others that may have things that they are doing to support women at work, but it's never easy, no matter how much help you have. And let me end on this note. One thing that I dislike is when I'm in international fora and we're talking about, and I'm very much a proponent and advocate for African women. And then they go, oh, but African women are doing well because there's always some because why African women are doing, we just can't do well because we are good. And I said, no, one thing I've heard and I always push back, and you should, is when they say, oh, African women are doing well, they can be in the international court and all that because they have people at home helping them to take care of their children and all that, so they have time. And I said, no, we may have, but one, the systems have changed. In the past, you had your grandmother, your aunties, all that. Now it is not. Now you have to pay a carer who you cannot trust. In Ghana, there have been horrible stories of what carers have done in homes. And so you're paying someone to take, and I know and have talked to several women lawyers and judges who will tell you, and I've seen some, you cannot have your carer take care of your child the way you want to. So they come home, they still have to do the work, make sure everything is done, take care of their children, and take care of the carer taking care of the children, manage that. And then they still have to help the children with homework. And then they have to take care of their husband. It's endless. So women are in this constant bind. Even when they have support, they still have work to do. So anyway, Nchiko, I'll end here. I hope it answers your question somehow. It's not easy, but we have to keep pushing. We have to find the right systems. If it's not working, sometimes know when to say no. Cut it off. I hope that helps. Rose.
Hi.
Hello.
I had written my question in the platform, but I'll have to read it. So my question was, what advice would you give to young lawyers, especially women, me included, with less than 5 years of experience, who feel stuck in the same law firm since they started practicing? Because I'm from Kenya, and we usually have this program called pupillage, and then now you're absorbed as an associate, but you really want to like move to another law firm or you do something else because you feel like your potential is limited. But because of the economy and whatever is happening in the employment industry, you feel like you're stuck, but you also feel like your potential is not, like you're not using all your potential in that law firm. So you want to progress, you want to diversify, you want to learn other things, but it seems very impossible for me especially. So I don't know what advice you would give me because I really want to explore and learn other different areas of law, but in the law firm that I'm in, and because of the employment opportunities that are quite few, I don't know how I can come out of that embargo. Let me just say that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you for that. I see that question. So I've just dropped in the chat box some research that we did on women lawyers, judges, and legal academics in Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Senegal. So those are good resources. And Rose, I'm sure when you read the one on lawyers in Kenya, you'll see yourself reflected a lot in those responses we got. So everyone, I encourage you to look at those for some background context. How do you get out of being stuck? I think you have to sit down and do a diagnostics of why am I stuck, which I think I heard you say some of the reasons. The economy is one of them, opportunities and all that. Why am I stuck? Where do I want to be? Or where do I want to go? And how do I get there? Who do I need? So it comes back to mentors and other people that you don't know. And then what is a strategy to get in there? Yeah, so why am I stuck? Where do I want to be? How do I get there? Who do I need to get there? What is my strategy? So with these questions in mind, then you begin to plot. And those are things we've talked about, cutting out the noise, making good use of good noise, relying on mentors, working so hard so you stand out, distinguish yourself, keeping a very good social media, at least LinkedIn profile, learning from other people. And then, of course, you begin to develop the strategies. When you have a good list of why you are stuck, that can help you. The economy, yes, you cannot control the economy, but if you distinguish yourself, that will make you marketable. Then you can look for other opportunities to move away from. Now, let me also say this. As I said, in my previous life, I was a lawyer. So I think I've been talking more like an academic than a lawyer. But let me tell you that you don't have to be a lawyer forever. My first degree was in law. I was called to the bar in Ghana. My master's was in international development, and my PhD is in political science. Now, when I was doing this, people were like, what do you really want to do? You know, you're switching from law, you're this, you're that. And I said, watch me. I have a strategy. Just watch me. Now, it took a long time. Yeah. 5 years of law school, 2 years of a master's, 5 years of a PhD. It felt like I was in school forever. People were like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have children? When are you going to work? It felt like it would never end. But because I had a strategy, I was so focused and knew what I wanted. I was just doing it, and I was just doing it, and I was just taking out the time. And then one day, boom, it got done. So now I can sell myself as a lawyer, as an international development expert, as a political scientist, and as a women's rights person or gender and law. So diversify your background. So Rose, if that means you're going back to school to study something else apart from law, you don't have to give the law away. I never did, because when we are talking international development, I can talk about it from a legal perspective. When we're talking about political science, I can look at the international human rights systems, I can understand international law, and I can look at even international relations from a legal perspective. When we're talking about women's rights, I can look at it from a legal perspective. Now, the point is, remember, what do you love? Some people did law. I don't know what the reasons were, but there's always something. We don't love only the law. There are many other things we love. And I told students some time ago in Accra, Ghana, if you love history or you love English, think about how you can combine that with your law and figure out there are so many opportunities out there. Create something new that the world doesn't even know. In Nairobi, in Pretoria, in Accra, and wherever I'm making a name, trying to figure out where people are from. In Lagos, wherever you are from, think about how you can create something that the world hasn't seen. You can do it. So think about your strengths, put them together, and create something new that we don't know about, so that you are creating a pathway for yourself that didn't exist. Let me end on this note, Rose. In 2017 or 18 or 16, I don't remember when, I keep asking her, we have different dates. When I was a Fulbright scholar, I gave a talk at the University of Ghana. And out of the 30-something students in the room, 3 of them kind of followed up with me after that. And that's another thing about mentoring. They followed up with me. 2 were, okay, once in a while they show up, but the other one of them stuck with me. She was constantly in email, texting me. So she became someone I noticed, and I would respond to her messages, because I felt she's serious. And it wasn't the annoying type of following. So be careful too, because that's the annoying one where the person's like, on you. And that one where you can like, okay, this is a good one. And so I kept in touch with her. She was progressing. She finished law school. She finished law faculty. She went to law school. I was advising her. I got to know her, so I could write her recommendation letters. And she was in Accra. So if I needed something done, errands run, I would call her. She would do it happily. So she built the trust, or I built a trust. We built trust in each other. And years later, she finished. She was working in a law firm that had written a recommendation letter. I knew the partner. So I spoke to the partner, like, hey, I have somebody. And then she got that job. And then she was working there. She wanted to go do her master's in Europe. I wrote a recommendation letter. So I knew her, right? And then eventually, after some time, and so all this while, she was volunteering with me for free. She was doing stuff for me while she was a student, while she was a lawyer. She had a baby. She still did stuff for me when I called on her. She was still working for me when she was in her master's program in the Netherlands. So eventually, when I got money, I was able to put her on a little stipend. And then as we talked, I started telling her, okay, now you're my baby sister because you graduated from a mentee, you're now like family to me. So I could tell her like, okay, now I'm going to talk to you as a big sister. Yeah, so I could tell her certain things. So one time we were talking, she said, I don't know, I don't really like the law. I don't think I want to continue to do litigations. I said, what do you want to do? And she said, I don't know, I'm looking for something new to do. And I said, well, the institute is hiring. Are you interested? You've been working with me for all these years. You want to try it? She said, yes. I hired her as my program manager. And 6 years now, she graduated from program manager to director of operations. And she still works with the institute. She is so good with operations. Now everybody knows her name. And when you mention IWOL, Institute for African, it's like, oh, Atre, she's become a household name. So let me end on this note, Rose. There are many things you can do out there. Seek opportunities, and this is when mentors come in. You build a relationship, they know you, they hear of things, they give it to you. And I tell this lady, I said, look, I know one day you'll probably transition to another job. I will cry when you go, but I'll be so happy to write you the recommendation letter because I want to continue to push you up. I'll miss you, but let me tell you, you forever work with me because you're so good. That is the kind of person you want to be, that people say, this is a person I want to help, I want to push, I want to give opportunities, and they'll guide you in the right way. So, Rose, there's opportunity for you to find new ways, think about it, and stand out, stand out. There's the other thing I'm realizing. It's partly our culture, which is great. African cultures are beautiful, but it can be problematic. Yeah, we're so laid back, we're so soft-spoken, all those things. And this is where, once again, technology comes in. You can sit in Nairobi, Mukuru, Lagos, Benin State, Accra, Addis Ababa, wherever you are. You don't have to travel anywhere in the world. The world is right there on your phone. Look and see, who do I want to be like? What do I want to be like? And you can work your way towards that. As we're talking about, apart from LinkedIn, another important tool I would encourage you, if you don't do already, is TED Talks. You've heard about TED Talks. Free coaching, free leadership. Listen to people on TED Talks. Learn from their experiences. There are so many other platforms out there. MOOCs and Khan Academy, Coursera, even LinkedIn has those courses. There are so many of those free courses online that you can take to learn in order to build yourself so you can sell yourself. So remember, you have to learn, build yourself so you can sell yourself. Take out those opportunities and learn. Look in the mirror. Say, I want to learn public speaking. Listen to TED Talks. All these things are on there. So the skills you need, the skills you want, you can get them for free in this world we are in. So Rose, I hope this helped, and for everybody else. And I will move on to a couple of hands. I know Ayon has a hand, and I really have to be going now, running late for my program. But let me touch on very quickly. I see some of the questions in the chat box here. Somebody talked about the power dynamics. How can you, as a young woman, deal with the challenge of power? And look, look, sexual harassment is real. Unwanted sexual advances are real. I think what we also need to do, one, we need support from men, but most importantly, women, we have to do it together. So many people go through the sexual harassment and advances and unwanted advances, but we're all shy, one, to talk about it. Sometimes we also think we are going through it alone, but research shows that it is widespread. So when we get together as women, let's share those experiences, because you know what? You all heard about the Me Too movement. When it became public, some people couldn't hide anymore because women were coming out and saying, yes, he did it to me. He did it to me. So another thing is, let's support each other. Women, let's trust each other. Let's talk together, because when we all come out and we say, this person did this and this to us, the person cannot deny. But when it's one person, it's easy for them to deny. And unfortunately, Other women will be the ones to say, oh, this young woman, we know her, she's like that. So let's support each other, because if we don't do that, then we are leaving each other to stand the brunt of facing those harassers, and they'll continue to do that. They'll continue to do that. But the emphasis on mentorship, as you truly say, in your view, do cultural norms around respect impede early career scholars and students from seeking guidance from senior colleagues? I think it's the opposite. Correct me if I'm wrong. Shouldn't it be the opposite? Because African systems have the system of respect age. And so you can talk to people, they'll be happy that you're talking to them as an elder. They'll rather be happy that they're giving you advice as an elder. So I think it's the other way around. But of course, like I said, be careful, because sometimes that respect, and I wrote this in a chapter on the legal academy in Ghana, that respect can then become, okay, you're a small girl, hey, I can touch you, I can talk to you anyhow. No. So maybe that's where it gets dicey. But I think that the respect can be helpful. Let me give you a quick example once again. In my line of work, I am connected to really high profile people, top lawyers, top judges, chief justices. And it's funny because I find myself in that position. They call me Prof, and I'm like, CJ, and I'm like, Justice. I'm like, Mr. this or Miss that. So some of them, depending on how free I am, I can say auntie, right? So I switch between Miss or Mrs. and auntie. But I find that they are giving me so much respect. Like, what did they see in me that are respecting me? But I am also giving them so much respect, because I find myself based in I tell them, there's some of them, so call me by my first name. Like, I'm a Ghanaian, no, I can't call you by first name. That it can't work. I'm an American, but hey, no, I have to still maintain respect. So it's true that it can be an impediment, but it can also be a helpful one. And then just learn to withdraw if you realize that it's going in the wrong direction. Yeah. So I hope that also helps you with that. And so like, give me 5 minutes, so I have to stop because I really need to be going. But I want to make sure I tackle a few more. So Chico's question has been, Rose's has been, Michelle Kakai, how can early career lawyers go about building this network in a meaningful way? What strategies do you recommend for approaching someone you admire to be your mentor? And how do you assess whether they are the right fit for your specific career goals? Okay, so I think I've answered this somehow. Let me tell you, when I had just finished high school, I met my mentor, and she's still my mentor 30-something years later. Yeah. I chose her to be my mentor because at that time she was 29 years old. She had a PhD. She was an assistant professor of sociology, criminology, and she was serving on the mayor's this and all that. So I said, this is the person I want to be like. And I chose her to be my mentor. Guess what? 30-something years later, I've never met her. I don't know her. I've never met her. Why did I meet her? How did I choose her to be my mentor? I saw her in an Ebony magazine. And I looked at her, like, she's so nice, and yeah, I want to be like her. And I cut it out. And when I was preparing for this, I was looking for it to show you all, but I'm traveling, so everything is everywhere. I cut out the magazine and I kept it. Every time I look at it, I had it in my room, in my wall, like reminder. So eventually I laminated it, so that it will not go bad. And I still have it. I laminated it. I used to have it in my dorm room all the time. And I just wanted to be like her. So you can find your mentor even when you don't know them. Now, let me tell you the trick. It's the funny part. The day I graduated with my PhD, my brother came down with his friends. And then one of his friends said, oh, you remember that woman who used to be on your wall in Legon? Legon is University of Ghana. I said, which woman? Oh, that woman, that funny woman, where they have on your wall, speaking pidgin. I said, oh, you remember? So even my brother's friend who used to visit me in my dorm with my brother, I'm sure he was looking at my roommates, but not saying it because they always come down. My brother would come every time with his friends. He remembered. So I had Nanette Graham, and I still have it. So the point is, you can choose a mentor from a distance, and it guided me. Now, later on, I looked for her. My daughter went on Facebook. We looked for her. We thought, okay, maybe we had found it and it's time for me to go. And I still haven't found her. And so you can find mentors, but in real life, how to find people, I think we've talked about it. Find the right person, reach out, and also reach out, not be an extractivist, yeah? Are you giving back? When I get people who are like, oh, they want to extract, they want to get, I'm like, okay, let's see. So be that person who is willing to give as you take, as we talked about. And like I said, if it's not working, you will know. If they are male, they start making advances towards you. If they are female or male and they don't have time for you, there's so much, they really are not interested in you. On the other hand, they also just want to extract, but not really fine. You will know, and you will move on. Lastly, remember that mentors are not only for career. So the person may not be a lawyer or anything in the legal field, but they can still give you guidance, they can still give you support, they can give you all sorts of guidance. So it doesn't have to be on law alone. So I'll stop here. I unfortunately really wish I didn't have to go because such wonderful questions, but I do hope it's been helpful to you. I'll be happy to come back, just make sure that I have enough notice and time. Reach out to me, follow me on LinkedIn. Let me caution you, I don't do LinkedIn often, and a few times I do, I'm so busy, I don't get to respond, but I will do well. You get to see what's going on in my life. Professor Hill is here, Professor Gatti, Otieno, they can connect you if you really need to talk to me. I'll try, but I just have so much going on, and I really hope that you will learn from the time we've shared together and grow. And don't be those mentors or mentees or students who reach out to their professors 5 years later and say, oh, I took your class and I learned so much. You did this and encouraged me. Can you give me a recommendation letter? I got one of those 2 weeks ago. I really wanted to help her. The name looked familiar, and seriously, I couldn't remember her. 5 years ago, I'm like, you know what? I can write you that letter. This is what you to read. XYZ took my class in 2019. She made an A. I think she'd be a good law student. LSAC, they'll throw it away like, okay, she doesn't know her. And I said, you want that? I can write it for you, but it will not help you. So be constant in your relationships. Funny enough, last week, another mentee wrote me. I taught her 12 years ago. And she reached out, and she actually had a picture that we had taken together because I took her and a group of other students to a conference because they were good like that. And you know my first response to her? I said, hello, X. Just last week, a student I taught 5 years ago wrote me and asked me a recommendation letter. I couldn't write one for them, but you, I remember you. I'm sure if she had read just the first line, she'd be like, okay, she's not going to write a letter for me. I said, you, I remember you because you were that good. So let me end up on that note. Be that one who creates that impression that people remember you 12 years later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Dawuni. I think that even though we didn't get through all of the questions individually, you definitely touched on every single one of them in your answers. And yeah, we will do this again. We look forward to reading the book that's been in progress for 9 years. We look forward to reading your research findings from the National Research Foundation and just to following your journey on LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure to have you. I personally have learned so much, and I know that everybody else has. And yeah, I'll give over to Prof. Ohio, but once again, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate the time that you took to be here, especially the extra almost 20 minutes that we stole.
And I just want to touch on that. Thank you so much, Prof. This has really been amazing. We've had over 100 people participate, and we've kept, over 89 to 90 participants throughout, which demonstrates how useful and helpful this has been. And I just wanted to say, while we have a lot of people still online, while you're still here as well, that definitely I get the sense that we're going to have a session and a panel on mentorship where we can hear from people like you, because Professor Gatti has been a mentor to me as well. And when you were speaking about the process of how you chose your mentors and role models, it resonated with me. And the last point you just made about when people write to you and ask for recommendations, I've gone through that same experience as well. So I believe that it's very important that we have a follow-up on this, perhaps a panel where we can actually have a diversity of views and really address a lot of the questions that have been raised here. Thank you so much. We've really enjoyed this session. And sorry for keeping you over the time.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Go shine. You can be the best in the world. Let's go do it. And let me hit the road. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. And we will be getting back to you on the next session we'll be having on this. Thank you, Leezola, for an excellent moderation.